called in for this job, great. Now the order is filled. Sometimes we just need to take that step. Something I learned from Belinda when I was on the trade side, my first couple of weeks with her, was sometimes it's easier to call the client and be like, hey, I'm looking for you. Do you want the right person for this, or do you want someone who can just stand in front of a mirror and breathe?
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So, and again, sometimes people put us in those positions too, right? They say, hey, just send anybody, you know. Well, is that really the right thing to do? And as we think about our positions and the roles that we have and the different things that we're hiring for our company, how important is that for us to make sure again that we're looking at the talents that people have and we're asking the right questions. It doesn't take much to kind of dig into this and find out if it's a right fit for somebody. So thank you. And it says here, of course, a more productive solution is to start by respecting the role. So again, think about it, whether we're recruiting or whether we're hiring as managers, that we are respecting the role enough to select for talent in the first place, because that makes all the difference. Again, remember, selecting for talent, hiring for talent is going to change everything. When you send the right person on a job, then and they're the right fit, how much better is that going to be, and what kind of response are you going to get from the client, when that comes back? So the same thing goes for us. When we are selecting or hiring for talent, how much better is our experience going to be with those employees that we're responsible for? How much better is productivity going to be and performance going to be if we're hiring for talent? Okay. So the third temptation is, trust is precious, it must be earned. We've all heard that. Trust must be earned. So does that mean we're always mistrustful? If trust must be earned, so we don't trust anybody until it's earned? Is that how you guys are? Who believes that, it must be earned and there's no trust until it's earned? Or do you trust people?
We
Arturo,
have to trust people, Carrie.
okay.
It's interesting too, because trust is not a, a one-way road. Is absolutely a two-way, you know two-way lane here. Is not only do you need to trust them, but they need to trust you, in your leadership and in the way. And if you're doing things to break their trust, that can absolutely be devastating to both your culture, to productivity, to everything. And so trust has to be both ways.
Yeah, it does have to be both ways. Um, but what does it say about each of us? Um, if trust, the only way to have trust is to earn it. And I was going to ask Arturo. So Arturo, if the only way to have trust is because you have to earn it, is that the way we should be going? How does that work if that's the case?
Well, what I think is when we hire someone, at that moment that we do the hiring decision is because we believe we can trust in this person to not only do the work but also perform for us. At that moment, after all the interview process and all the screening that has been done, is when they have earned my trust to put them working, to put them work with our company. Now, trust can be lost uh, regarding on what's the productivity level within the next couple of days, weeks, months, depending on how they utilize their time the best. So that's what I think.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that's really important piece is, um, when we start with somebody, when you hire for talent, to me it's like saying, okay, I hired you because you had these talents for this role, and we're going to give you the training. We're not just going to throw you to the wolves. We're going to give you the training and show you what we do. But then I'm going to trust that you're going to do your part, right? Now, trust can be broken, but my first goal is that trust is not broken, that I do trust that person because I hired that person for the talents for the role. So I'm putting a lot of trust in that individual. Now that individual may, you know, may not be a good fit, may mess up, may change course, whatever the case may be. So then we don't have that same trust level. But in the beginning, I want to be trustworthy on those people right from the start, and I want them to know it. I hired you because of your talent, and I want you to know that I hired you because of that, and I trust you to do the job. Kyle?
Yeah, also when we trust, and I'm thinking of the book, The Speed of Trust, a great read, by the way. Just think of how much faster things move when we trust, how much quicker things get done when we trust. And the contrary is the sluggishness of distrust. Who wants sluggishness? Who wants to have people always verifying every little detail of each person's lives? Pretty soon, two people are doing a one-person job because they have to micromanage every little thing. Think how slow that is, and think of how icky that is to be the micromanaged person. And it's just amazing how much quicker things get done when we do trust. And it's a great thing it's a great exercise to do. If you feel like you're not trusting, just try it out and see what happens. It's amazing what happens in that. I think people have more peace in their lives when they trust. They have things do get done. Now, yes, of course, trust can be broken, and that's unfortunate, and things, you know, some changes need to occur sometimes in that case. But it's just a great thing to trust. So anyway, The Speed of Trust, great read.
It is a good read. Thank you, Kyle. No, it's really good. I just to end this one, it says they believe that if you expect the best from people, then more than often not, the best is what you're going to get. So again, if you trust people and you expect the best from them, the best is typically what you're going to get more often than not. The last piece here is under the temptations is some outcomes defy definition. That a weak statement? Why, Ashley Labrum?
Because if the entire point of any business is to have performance, then you have to be able to define the outcome. Otherwise, how can you measure any sort of performance at all? But even like as an EMT, when we were doing that, or when I was in the military, that seems like a grayer area to define, right? But there were still standards that we had to meet in order to be successful at our positions, you know, and it wasn't just the basics of like, how much time did it take you to get from the scene to the hospital? You know, there were more things involved in that, but all of those outcomes can be defined.
Yeah. We just need to maybe spend a little more time defining them, right? Rather than just giving up and saying, okay, they can't, this is really hard. I don't want to do, you know, as a coach and a leader, we can't do that. We can't give up. We can't allow ourselves to just throw in the towel just because it's hard. It's more important for us to work towards, you know, doing that. So some outcomes, it says first, are indeed difficult to define. Things like sales, profit, revenue, you know, those sorts of things, student grades, it talked a little bit about, those can be defined pretty easily, but customer satisfaction sometimes is a tougher one. But they still can be defined. And again, second, if you do fail to define in outcome terms, customer satisfaction or employee morale or whatever, then you still have to find some way to encourage people to pay attention to their customers or their employees. So defining the right steps is certainly, you know, one such way. But again, don't throw in the towel in defining the outcomes. So it in the middle there even says, you know, rather than defining a strong culture in terms of employees' emotional outcomes, this is how we want our employees to feel. Many companies have chosen to break culture down into steps. So This is not what we're striving to do, is break it into steps. We're wanting to define it in terms of the emotional outcomes and what things, what tool, what resource do we have right now that helps us define into into that very thing, the emotional outcomes. What tool do we have? We've talked about it a few times.
Q12.
Q12, especially the first 6, right? Those things help us to define these outcomes. And what do we want to achieve from those Q12 questions, especially the first 6? What are we striving for? Becky, did you raise your hand?
Oh, fives all around.
5, that's right. We're trying to get 5s. We want to make that happen, so that we have that again, that emotional outcome that we get from that. That's really an important thing. Okay. Any other comments on defining that some outcomes defy definition? Any thoughts? Any other thoughts about that?
I think
So-
it's cool that
Go ahead,
we
Techie.
can always define an outcome, no matter how complex or vague things might be, including culture. I mean, if we focus on the Q12 questions or competencies, then we can really define outcomes and work towards it.
Yeah, right towards the end of this section, it says that defining the right outcomes to measure culture can be quite a challenge, but it is worth the effort. Okay, it's worth the effort. So as we get in this last little bit here, there's a lot of these rules of thumb, and I thought they were, there were some really good pieces as we talk about the rule of thumb. Hang on just a second, I gotta switch back over to my deal. So when and how do great managers rely on steps? As you read this, when and how do we rely on steps? Any thoughts about that?
It seems that it's when life or death is, it's when it's really a safety issue. So military, pilots on a plane, things that are like, you just can't afford, you can't afford any mistake, then you've got to have pretty heavy procedures.
Yeah, I think, safety, and do we get involved in safety in our company? So do we have some
It can be
steps?
life or death, but it's usually not as, I guess we haven't had a death, but we've had some really, really bad accidents. So it can be very unsafe. So, but I don't know how procedurized we are. I don't know that we sit and maybe we need to be more, but we probably don't consider ourselves sort of a life and death environment.
Yeah, I think to that, I think it just depends on maybe the company, and we have to be really careful watching what, who we get involved with and that sort of thing. We do have some rules about, hey, we're not going to work with, roofing, for example, because roofing is a highly, chance of getting hurt and so forth. But I think we do have some safety mechanisms in place, things that each person needs to do and be aware of. I have seen some really bad things. In fact, we were in the process here at this company of looking at a company that we were going to acquire. And the day that we had one of our last discussions, they had a person get killed up in Idaho. And we pushed off of doing any further discussions with them. So we do have to be careful. It's very, it's just really important. But you're right, Ted. Safety is the key, and they gave the the information about pilots and so forth. People expect the safety thing, but they also they just expect it. They don't want to focus on it's not the fun thing or whatever.
The other
So
point they made, I thought was a good one, is just accuracy. If you're dealing with you're a bank or some regulated industry, and you just kind of have a zero tolerance again because of fraud or other stuff. So I think I like their examples of safety and accuracy.
Yeah, in rule number 4, there are no steps leading to customer satisfaction. It talked about level 1, and remember, on these levels, as we talk about them, the lowest level has to be accomplished first, so it's hierarchy. So level 1 was accuracy. Anybody know what level 2 is?
Availability.
Availability. How important is availability in the staffing industry? Do clients expect you to be available? Yeah. So accurate, and then available, and then what? What's number 3? Partnership. Okay. We want to be partners with our clients. That's the next level. So if we get accuracy and availability right, and believe me, these are things that have been going on in the industry for so many years that I hear over and over. You guys send me the wrong people, and every time I call you, I can never get hold of anybody. I just get a voicemail, or you call me back 3 days later, or whatever. So accuracy is extremely important. Availability is extremely important. And if you get those right, maybe now I'll be a partner with you and listen to some of the things you're going to tell me. But if you can't do those first 2, I'm not going to listen to you. Okay. So partnership, level 3, very important. And level 4, any of you remember what level 4 is?
Advice.
Advice. Now we become the consultant. Now we become the person who they rely upon, who actually gives them good information, who's going to share with them the right things. So very, very important for us to think about those 4 levels. We already have them in our DNA in this industry. We just have to check ourselves and say, how are we doing with those? How are we doing with each of those steps? And are we following it? It's a simple rule, and I love it. A very simple group of steps. Ashley Labrum.
I have a short story kind of in this vein, and it really resonated with me when I was reading it. So in the moving industry, we had surveys that each customer would get right after their move, and we would get scored on it as an agency on that. And when we went to work with another agency that would send people to us, they wouldn't work with us. They would work with the competitors in town because our scores were so bad. So we dug into why the scores were bad. And it was interesting because, like, on packing, our packing scores, as far as getting the items there safely, were high, but the customer satisfaction was very low. And we couldn't figure out where the gap was, right? We're like, well, we're getting your things from A to B without breaking them. What more could you want? And as soon as we kind of put these pieces almost exactly into place, where the move coordinator became a consultant, we were available via text all the time. The salespeople were going out, showing people how to pack their own things. The packers were taking their time to show the customers what we were packing and how we were doing it. Like, just those steps bumped our scores all the way up, and we were suddenly the highest scoring agency in the market. And it was interesting that it really was all 4 of these levels that took us to the ability to be the highest performing agent in the market.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's again, these things, we can define them, we can measure them, we can, figure these things out. And it's really important for us to be focused on how do we do that? And as we think about, again, defining outcomes, we do have this autonomy as an individual to fulfill our role and responsibilities. There's not steps all along the way, but we do have standards, right? We have things that we do need to follow. We have a culture in our company, right? Do you feel like that's part of our standard? Those are our standards, right? We have standards within. So let me, in the sales side, I'll just pick on that since that's what I've been focused on for so many years. Jason, what's our standard for needs audits? What's our standard for needs audits every month?
Oh, how many? Yeah.
How many should we be getting?
We should be getting 20.
Right. It's our standard. We have a set of standards, you know, it comes to, you know, 2 to 4 closes every month per person. A closing ratio of 20 to 40%. Those are standards. Also part of our standard that we do is every salesperson or every person in the sales department should go through our base camp program and learn, you know, because it talks about here in the book, there's a language that happens and we want to be on that common language. That's part of our standard as a company. So each of us in each of our roles, not just the sales, I picked on that, but recruiting has the same way. HR has the same way. Everybody, we've got these standards that we have. And I love this statement. It says, it simply means that employees will have to express their creativity and individuality through a standard medium. And that it happens more so because there are standards, there are greater ways to be more creative. They talked about music. They talked about the standards in the music and the notes and so forth. There was a process that happens in music, and because you understand those standards, you now can be very creative, you know, with the music together. So making your standards universal is already a telling competitive advantage. You want a competitive advantage, then have standards that are universal within our company. We have those 4 documents. We spent weeks in the beginning on those 4 documents. Our standards are very strong. So it's really important for us to remember what those standards are. Don't let steps obscure the outcome, but steps are important part of the piece to get there when it comes to our standards and that sort of thing. So, but again, it doesn't have to be, overbearing. The last thing, how do you know if the outcomes you have are right? How do we know if the outcomes are right? And this is in the section that says, what do you get paid to do? How do you know if they're right?
If it's right for your customer.
Say that again.
If it's right for your customer.
Okay. So there were 3 things, right? There was what's right for the customer is one of them. What's another one?
What's right for your company?
What's right for your company. So you got customer, company, and the last one. Bueller? Anybody seen that movie?
What's right
Say
for
it
the
again.
What's right for the individual?
What's right for the individual. That's right. So we need to look at these things. So we have, again, some of the standards are already there. Some of them we're defining. There's new roles that come up. We have to define those, those positions and what those pieces are going to be, what the outcomes for that's going to be. But we need to have those. We need to identify those. And I think, again, when we are looking at hiring for talent, we need to be focused next on we should know what the outcomes are first, right? When we're hiring for talent, we need to know what the outcomes are first. So we're hiring for the ability to hit those outcomes. Okay. I loved the story of Dennis Rodman. And if you don't know who Dennis Rodman is, he was a very interesting character in the NBA. I never liked him because he was just a crazy person when it comes to always, kind of taking on the Jazz and all that kind of stuff. But I love the story, and I think he has a great story. And the fact that, the coach was smart enough to start developing properly, and he identified a person's strengths, and then he defined the outcomes around those strengths. And he played to the strengths. And what happened to Dennis Rodman? What did Dennis Rodman do?
He became the best rebounder of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. And he stopped doing, missing practices and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he completely changed in his performance because they defined the outcomes and they built it around his strengths and talents. And they played to that, and it turned out to be an amazing thing for them. So again, find a way to count, rate, or rank those outcomes. And I love this. And then let the person run. Okay. Each person has their own way of going about things, that least resistance thing. Find the right way and then let that person run. And then we have accountability things that come into it, but we're going after the outcomes that we're striving for. Now, there was an important piece here. We're just about finished. If your team is small and variously talented, then you must take each person's unique talents into account when defining the right outcomes. Our company, with each of the teams that are broken down, is small enough to be able to do that. That's the power behind what we have. So if it's a large company, it becomes a little more difficult in building or playing towards someone's strengths, making the outcomes play towards their strengths. But in our company, we can do that. Okay, we are small enough to do that. So when defining the right outcomes for their people, great managers do the same. They go from players to plays. They go from players to plays. What does that mean? They go from players to plays. What does that mean? Let's finish off with that. What does that mean? Think of Dennis Rodman. They go from players to plays. If you're running a team, a football team, and you're coaching, and you understand the talents of your individuals, what are we saying here? Going from players to plays.
You build your plays around your best players.
Yeah. And you know what they're capable of doing, so you build your plays to fit that. Okay? That's what it's striving to tell us to do. So as we think about this chapter, defining outcomes, so let's just think about this. I'm hiring people, or I'm going to be hiring people. Are my outcomes defined before I start having discussions with people I'm going to hire? And if they're not, we need to work on that. So here's what we're going to do. This is the coming week's homework assignment. Okay. What are your outcomes for your team, for your different roles? Do you know them? I would like you to get with your managers and your leaders and make sure that they are defined. Okay. Find a lot on the sales side. For me, I know that part. But does everybody know that part on the sales team? Kyle has spent a lot of time in the years, defining outcomes and so forth. But does everybody know those? We need to understand if you're in a position right now where you're going to be hiring somebody. Are you going to be hiring for talent and strengths? Do you know the outcomes to be able to achieve that? So we need to define those. This is a good start. Now, we may not get them perfected immediately, but let's get started on it. So next week, I want to talk briefly about what are your outcomes for your team, for each individual role that you have. What are the outcomes for that? And how do we start looking for strengths and talents when we hire? Any other comments or questions on this chapter? I really love this chapter. It's really a good one for us to be focused on. So powerful. But if you don't have these definitions down, you're going to really struggle on the hiring side. Okay. Any other comments or questions that you have for this one? I apologize, Ashley Labrum. Thank you for telling me we didn't start the recording. So we have to go back now. Could you guys have an extra half an hour so we can redo the beginning of it? I'm just kidding.
I started it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's acting like it's been going for an hour, but I did once Ashley said that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see how much we got.
Yeah, I think we got at least half of it. I think we got at
Okay.
least half of it. So,
Thanks,
but
everybody.
yeah, Maria, did you have a comment?
Not really a comment. I did remind everyone that every week we try to send out their survey questions. It's really easy, just 3 yes, no, basically agree, disagree, and answer a question. If everyone can participate, because that really helps the management team decide if we're learning anything.
Yeah, if we're learning, how you're responding, so please do respond. We love your feedback and comments and scores, so we can judge a little bit better. Here's where we're going to be at for next week. So we just did key number 2, define the right outcomes. Next week is key 3, focus on strengths. Okay, Kyle and I will be working together on this. Read chapter 5 and first break all the rules. Okay, so again, this document is in the management training piece under the documents and content, so you can go there and look that up. But this is really an important piece, these 4 keys. So please be aware, chapter 5 in the book. Be prepared. Please read. This isn't about me lecturing to you. It's about you participating in the discussion and what you have. So please read the information. Let's be focused on this. And thank you for your participation today. I really do appreciate it. And then make sure you go in and let's define those outcomes the best you can. Let's work on that. Let's talk about that a little bit next week. Okay. All right. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys all later. Thank you.